Good evening. This is John Milburn for Laws 19038, Planning and Environment Law. And this is week number 2. The subject is a difficult subject in that we have a lot of reading, but what I hope to do is provide you with some guidance in relation to that reading, which will assist you in terms of being able to identify the major issues in this course, the major pieces of legislation, both state and federal, and also the appropriate case law. What I will also do is show you some of the websites that may become very valuable to you in practice in this area of law. Now, I understand, of course, you're not law students. If there are any law students or previous law students, please let us know, and we might lean on you a bit collectively to assist in helping your colleagues through. So at the moment, the textbook that we have prescribed is the 9th edition of Bates. It's an excellent textbook. If I have one criticism of it, it's quite theoretically based. So there's the 9th, and it's also very long. It's quite involved. The 8th edition is also, of course, very good. We've had a couple of people ask whether they can use the 8th edition, and the answer is yes, but you may find some difficulty in terms of cross-referencing. But I may have something of a solution, and that is, in previous offerings of this and other environmental law courses, I provided a summary or case summary, or rather a chapter summary of the individual subjects in Bates' 8th edition. I might re-release that for this course, and I might do the same thing for the 9th edition. So while it will only be essentially a summary of each chapter of the textbook, you may find it useful to either confirm some of your interpretations of what's written in the text, or to identify those things in the text that at least I think are more important for you to consider. Now, just because I stress something, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the most important thing. When you read the chapter, you may pick up in other things from that material, and there is no right or wrong answer. But I'll provide that as a guide to assist you with your study and the reading, because I appreciate there's a lot of it. I'll also provide you with some commentary to assist you in preparing the assignment. And we'll do that through these Zoom sessions. We'll do it through the answers that you provide each week to the weekly problems, and also through chats in UCrew. Ellie, thank you very much for your contribution on UCrew in particular. There may be others, and we'll have a look at that tonight. If you have a question, please feel free to unmute your microphone or to ask a question through the chat facility. Either way is fine. All right, we only have a small group tonight. It won't be a long session, you'll be pleased to hear, and I will upload this session, as I do all sessions, onto the Moodle site for you to look at in the future. Now, speaking of the Moodle site, because I haven't worked with you before, and I have some particular ways of doing things, let's have a look at that Moodle site, and I'll identify some of the things that I think are particularly important. So there we have the front page for 19038 in terms of the work that you need to do, the assessments and the weekly problems, summaries, etc. The main communication is through UCrew. I've made a note to that effect. If you're looking for UCrew, it's just down here under the latest information. We'll have a look at that now, the course discussion. This takes the place of the general discussion and the Q&A sections that you may otherwise be familiar with. Now, just to give you an idea, I've got a number of subjects. So this is 19038. I'll go to that page, and Ellie has asked some questions about the assessment, which I'll answer, and Stacey has been, and Jordan have been asking some questions as well. Okay, so if you have any questions, if you have any contribution that you wish to make, then generally speaking, that should be through UCrew. So thank you for doing that. And I've been out of action for a little while this week, so I need to catch up, and I'm usually pretty prompt in providing a response to anything that comes up on UCRU. The next thing, of course, is Zoom. So those of you online now have found Zoom. Those of you that are watching this as a later recorded session, I would encourage you to join us live. I will say that while the designated time is 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening, sometimes I'll bring that forward to 6:30 p.m. I run a sister course to this for a different school within CQU, and it may be that we can join, particularly if it means getting a larger class than the number of people that are online tonight. So for those of you that are online, would that create any great difficulties if occasionally I go to 6:30? All good? Okay. And there's some background about me that you can have a look at as well. Okay. I do make announcements from time to time. I use this news forum, and really I was just at this stage the welcome commentary. You'll see on my page that there is general discussion and Q&A, but that will be blanked out on your page at the top left-hand side. The important thing, of course, is the assessment, and we have the assessment due on the 27th of April and the assessment due on the 1st of June. So in this course, it's a pretty straightforward assessment regime, and we'll talk about that briefly tonight, and I will talk about that on a week-by-week basis. So it's important that you join us live, and if you can't join us live, have a look at the video as we go. Look, let's just have a look at a few other things that we need to consider when studying this course, and I'm starting quite generally. We have the assessment overview, just the 50-50 assessment, no invigilated examination in this instance. Student feedback, particularly in relation to UCRU, recommendation that we continue with it and continue with environmental law in Australia as the leading text. Teaching contacts is really just me. The referencing style is the Australian Guide to Legal Citations. Now, that's a little different to what you may be familiar with through Harvard referencing. So the easiest way that I can describe the use of AGLC is to follow what's in the textbook. So you'll see in the textbook that we have footnote referencing, and that's the primary visual aid to AGLC. You don't need to put in an index or a cover sheet for your assessment, but you can if you wish. And if you do put in a cover sheet, that's fine. It actually kind of helps me a bit. If you put in a contents page or an index, then that's fine too, but you don't have to. You don't have to put in a bibliography, but it's a good idea, I think, to do that, but it's not a requirement. What is a requirement is to footnote reference and to use the basic rules in the AGLC. Now, I have provided a link to AGLC. I've also provided some commentaries and summaries of it. What you can do is go to the back page, and it's got a nice little neat summary of the entire contents, and in many ways that will give you all that you need to do. But as I said, one of the easiest ways to learn about footnote referencing and the way that lawyers reference is just have a look at the way Bates does it, because that's a great example. Okay. Oh, the other thing is that in my sample document, which I'll show you shortly, I've given you some examples of how to footnote reference as well. Okay. Are there any questions before I move on? Good. If there are, just let us know. I'll share the screen again and continue with the discussion. So the assessment tasks, just the 50-50. Have a look at the commentary there in terms of general guidance as to what's required. Because I released the assessment from day one, it won't surprise you if I say that the opportunity to get an extension is not good. Like, in other words, you can apply for an extension, but it's no good saying, look, I've got a problem this week, I've got a cold, or I've got some work commitments or something else, because it's very likely the response that I give to you at that stage is to say, well, you've had all this time to do it. By the last week, you should have all but finished it, and it's just a matter of polishing off the assessment. So please keep that in mind. One of the reasons I do that is to ensure that you get good feedback at an early time. And I can't really give you feedback while we've got assessments outstanding. So I put a cut-off limit. I say the assessment is due on, say, the Thursday. If you're late, you'll lose 5% per day. But there is a final cut-off, which is the Saturday week. So 9 days after the assessment is due, there's a final cut-off. I won't accept any further assessments. You would have lost 45% of the marks anyway, because it's 9 days late, applying that penalty of 5% per day. So the message that I can really say is this: make sure that you get your assessment in on time. Make a start at it now if you haven't already done so, and start to produce something that's almost ready at least a week before the assessment is actually due. Okay, thank you for that. We'll go back to the share screen. We'll have a look at some further things in relation to the unit profile. Have a look at the policies. One thing that's particularly important in law is the issue to do with academic misconduct, particularly plagiarism. I should explain that plagiarism is not collusion, or is not collaboration, rather. So collaboration is where you're genuinely discussing the topic, you're bouncing around ideas, you're arguing about different aspects of the assessment, and you're perfectly entitled to do that as far as I'm concerned. What you must do, however, is produce your own documentation and your own words when it comes to presenting the assessment. Okay, let's go back to the Moodle page and the assessment now. You'll see that we have the Your Tutor facility. Have either of you used that facility yet? Has anyone used the Your Tutor? I'm interested to see how that works in practice. It's a new innovation for the university. So perhaps give it a go at some stage if you're interested. Okay. All right. I'll share the screen again. And let's have a look at the assessments. The first assessment due on Thursday, the 27th of April. We'll call it up on the screen. So it's worth 50%, 3 parts. You need to read a case. Now, I understand, has anyone had difficulty accessing that case? A few different places you can look, through Austlii, or you can look through the court's website. So let's see if we can just show you. So the court's website is the authorised website, and that's where I encourage you to go to check out the material. Now, where is it gone? Why isn't that coming up? We'll get there. Here we are, court's website, and you'll see that there's a lot of material that is valuable for the material that you need here. So I've just clicked on the court's link. We've got a planning and environment court, and you'll see there's a number of cases there. The QPEC reference is a reference to the Queensland Planning and Environment Court. So that's one good way to find the case that you need. While we're on this page, it's a link actually to the Supreme Court Library. So from the court's website, it goes to the Supreme Court Library. But I'll just go back to the landing page for courts. We'll go through this in more detail, but there are court forms. You may need that as well. There are daily law lists. It's a good idea to have a look at that as well. And we'll consider some of these other things that are found on that website page a little later during the course. Okay, so coming back to the assessment, the first thing is to find that case. The second thing is to consider each of these issues. Now, The thing that's going to throw you, and this is where I'm really sorting out those people that are in the credit distinction and high distinction category, is the fourth part, the hypothetical appeal. We will talk more about this later, but the first three parts, providing some background, identifying the legal issues and applying the law, they're all pretty straightforward exercises. The hypothetical appeal is tough, and it's meant to be tough. So you don't have an invigilated examination in this course. It's just the assessment work. I want you to be in a position where you can look at a case and summarise it, identify the main factual issues, identify the main aspects of law, and then the important part is to theoretically put yourself in the shoes of being a lawyer for a moment and saying, well, if I was to, is there anything in this decision that I can argue was incorrect, which would justify me going on appeal? So when you see the list of cases which are provided each year, each month, each week, you'll see many cases go through the appeal courts, and they only go there when a lawyer argues that there's something wrong in the law, there's something wrong with the way that the judge applied the law, the judge didn't give proper emphasis to certain parts of the facts, etc. So the fourth exercise in relation to that hypothetical appeal, I'm not saying that Her Honour did anything wrong in that case, but what I am asking you to do is to say, I'm going to read this very carefully and see if I can find something that we could argue against. Now, you might say, but that's a bit strange. If a judge says this is the decision, then that's it. That's correct, isn't it? Well, bear in mind that if the law was as straightforward as that, we probably wouldn't need courts at all, because lawyers or anyone could just read the law and say, well, that applies in this circumstance, and just move on. But of course, we argue about things, and I'm not saying in a nasty way. We have litigation to resolve issues of important matters of fact. And when lawyers look at a set of facts, depending on the perspective of their client, they then argue alternate positions presented to a court, and the judge will either select one of those two positions or make up his or her own mind. But the point is this, that in reviewing that factual situation, lawyers quite often have different views. When matters go to a court and the lawyers ask the court to make a decision, the courts often have different views. So in the High Court, for example, you might have a split decision, 4-3. It doesn't mean that the three judges who were in the minority don't know their law or don't know what they're doing. What it means is that they adopted a different view of the facts in a particular case. So your exercise in determining the hypothetical appeal is to primarily argue that alternate view, which is available to you, to say, respectfully, Her Honour's decision is incorrect for these reasons, and tell me the reasons that you're going to argue. That's the hard part of the exercise. All right, if there are any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue. And we can talk more about these things in UCrew and in the weekly sessions that we will have through Zoom. So if you don't have a question right now, that's fine. There's plenty of time to ask questions down the track. All right, so you should be looking at my screen once again, and you should see the second part of the exercise. Have I got the correct screen on? Christy, you looking at the exercise? Good. All right, so part B is where you need to consider a recent case, and you need to consider the issues in relation to legal costs, and that's the hard part. Just looking at that now, I'm going to make a note to myself because I'm not sure that is entirely correct, I'm embarrassed to say, but I will check that. Part B. And I think, Ellie, you may have had a question about that as well. 038, question. All right, I'll come back to you on that. And the third part is in relation to the Queensland Government Planning Reform Directions paper. It's a little dated, it's 2015, but what I want you to do is consider what the government was thought important in determining the future of planning law in Queensland. So hopefully, I'll just test it, that link should work to the Planning Reform Directions paper. Okay. Are there any questions then in relation to any of those issues so far? I'll just stop the share. And that's my son diving in there. All right. Can you see me now again? Yes? All right. Thank you. The important part about the assessment is to identify the major issues of concern, to identify the main facts, and to apply the law. So when you're looking for the law, have a look at the court's website, which links through to the Supreme Court Library, and have a look at Austlii. They're pretty easy to get your head around. I guess the main problem is that there's a lot of material for you to consider at that stage. All right, let's have a look at the second assessment. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I like to work backwards. I think it's important that you understand what you need to do from the outset and then work towards that goal. So the second assessment is one where you're to consider the summary of an EIS and the terms of reference in relation to an application made through the Department of State Development Coordinator General's Projects website. Now, Ellie, did you have any questions about this problem or the previous problem? We can either deal with that now or we can do that through UCrew. Likewise, Christy, if you have any questions or problems. But this one is, I suppose, the assessment regime works like this. We are working backwards in the sense that the first question is for you to look at something that has already been presented to a court and decided by a court, and you have to consider how you might appeal it. We then work backwards to the point where we are in the second assessment, where we're looking at how the statutory approval process works in relation to a project that is substantial and one that relates to the Queensland state and Commonwealth legislation and administrative procedures. So I do hope that you enjoy doing that assessment, and I've had feedback from students in this and other courses that I've run in the past to say that that type of exercise has helped them in practice if you're going to practice in this area. All right, so they're the two assessment pieces. We go back to the Moodle page. You know how to get to UCrew. We'll just check that link now. And there it is at the bottom of the information. And I think I may have shown you this before, but that's going to take you through to the course discussion. And sometimes takes a little while for it to do so, but it should come up pretty quickly, generally speaking. And there it is. So for 19038, some questions there from Ellie and Stacey and Jordan. Okay. Going back to the course itself, I mentioned a sample document. We'll have a look at that now. If it's not there, I'll include it in the material. Yeah. So have a look at this under assessment information, which is in week 1. There is the sample document. Have you had a look at that? No? Okay. So because it's something I prepared, it's probably something that you should consider as it gives you a good idea of what I think is important in writing the assessment. It's useful perhaps in terms of providing some idea of the layout that I might consider appropriate, but also the substantive content is important. So actually read it and you'll see evidence of footnote referencing, which looks a bit like what you'll see in your textbook. You'll see that there's a title, there's headings that are consistent, and the font that you use, whatever you choose, is consistent. What I'm really getting at there is that you don't have to follow exactly what I've written here or the format. I've seen many students who present material which is far more professional looking than this. You can choose to go with the Calabria 11, which is left justified in this case, or you can choose something that you think is appropriate. But do be consistent. So if you're going to start with a certain font, please continue it through the process. It's a real giveaway, to me at least, when I see people who present work which is bits and pieces, and it looks just so obvious that they've cut and pasted material. So I do suggest that you stop that in the future. All right, I'll just go back to the share screen, and I think there was a question about Part A on Assessment 1, so I may go back to that. Thanks, Ellie. In terms of the sample document, I'd commend that to you, and you're free to download that and use it as you see fit into the future. All right, in terms of access to the Law Library, the Supreme Court Library, and other information, I'd recommend that you follow those links. So I've tried to keep the website quite uncluttered and useful in terms of giving you direct information to various resources. Okay, let's go back to, well, what I might do is, Ellie, if you want to ask a question now, that's good. Otherwise, I'll answer that question on UCrew. Perhaps have a look at that tomorrow. Might be the best way to go. Okay, so tonight was really meant to be an introductory session. By now, you should have been undertaking your reading. You should have read the assessment. You should be contributing through UCrew, and you should be have read my sample document and started to work on a format and a plan for tackling the two assessments that you need to undertake. The other important thing is that you do look at the problems. I left out a problem in week 1. I didn't give you a problem, but in week 2, you'll see here at the bottom of the information and in resources for the week is a problem. And the idea is that you read that problem and you allow yourself 30 minutes to provide a response. So when you come up with an answer to that issue, you should press this add a new discussion topic and type your response. So you can type your response in Word and then cut and paste it if you like. But I do expect people to contribute in that regard by providing something every week. And generally, I'll either go through those problems in the week itself or the following week. So you can expect that next week, amongst other things, we'll be talking about problem 2.0. So have your response to that and also have your response to the problem or problems for week 3. Okay, look, I'm going to stop the share for a moment. And are there any questions that anyone has at this stage? All good? Okay, great. All right, well, that is probably all I want to cover tonight, just as a short session. And I expect that we'll be chatting again, obviously, next week at 7 o'clock at this stage, but it may become 6:30 at various times. And of course, please continue to ask questions through UCrew. I've been a little tied up this week with various tasks, but any questions that you put, I'll provide a response very quickly to that. Okay, so nothing on the chat line. Are we all good to leave it at that for tonight? All okay? All right. If you've got a question or comment, please ask now. Otherwise, I'll okay. So what I'll do is I'll stop the recording and thank you very much.